The lockdown had lasted for nearly a month, and the city beyond Liam's apartment windows no longer felt alive. The streets below were empty. Traffic lights changed colors for cars that never came. Sidewalk cafes sat abandoned, their chairs gathering dust beneath silent skies. At night, the city glowed with millions of lights, yet somehow felt darker than ever before. For most people, the isolation was exhausting. For Liam, it was complicated. Because he wasn't alone. He had Zur. The alien exchange student had arrived on Earth 4 months earlier as part of a groundbreaking interstellar cultural program. Out of billions of humans, Liam's university had been chosen to host one of the first extraterrestrial visitors ever allowed to live among ordinary people. And somehow, she had ended up sharing his apartment. At first, the arrangement had been terrifying. Zur belonged to a species called the Illyrians, beings so different from humans that every interaction felt like stepping into the unknown. Her skin shimmered faintly beneath artificial light, shifting through subtle shades of blue and silver. Her large, luminous eyes seemed capable of seeing details invisible to everyone else. Even her breathing carried a soft melodic hum that sometimes echoed through the apartment during quiet evenings. There were moments when Liam caught himself staring. Not because she was strange, because she was fascinating. She moved through the world with a quiet curiosity that made ordinary things seem new again. Rain against a window. The smell of coffee. The sound of distant music. Everything captivated her. In the beginning, Liam worried constantly about doing something wrong. Sharing an apartment with someone from another planet was not exactly what he'd imagined for his senior year. But Zara quickly shattered most of his fears. She was thoughtful, patient, surprisingly funny once she became comfortable enough to speak freely. She learned human customs faster than anyone expected, carefully adapting her routines so she wouldn't make Liam uncomfortable. She even learned how to cook several Earth meals, although her first attempt at spaghetti had nearly triggered a small kitchen fire. Despite their differences, a comfortable rhythm slowly formed between them. Days became routines. Routines became habits. And habits became something neither of them questioned anymore. By the time the lockdown began, the apartment no longer felt like two strangers sharing a space. It felt like home. Their days started quietly. Morning sunlight spilled through the windows. Coffee brewed in the kitchen. Zira sat by the balcony, studying human books while Liam attended online classes. Outside, the world seemed frozen. Inside, life continued. And neither of them realized that the endless weeks of isolation were slowly turning an unusual friendship into something far more dangerous to their hearts. Each morning, Liam would wake to the soft sound of Zyra moving around the kitchen, humming in her unique tone while preparing breakfast. They would share meals at the small table near the window, talking about human customs, Earth culture, and the little things Liam had taken for granted, the taste of fresh bread, the warmth of sunlight on his skin, or the way rain sounded on the rooftop. Zyra listened with interest, asking questions that made Liam feel as if he were seeing his own world through a stranger's eyes. Evenings were the best. They would sit on the couch wrapped in blankets, watching old movies Liam had downloaded before the lockdown began. The laughter, soft and melodic, echoed through the room, brightening the dull days. Liam often felt that these moments of shared quiet were magical, small islands of peace in a chaotic, isolated world. But underneath the calm, Liam sometimes noticed subtle differences. Zyra's skin would pulse faintly in certain lights, and her tail, which she kept neatly coiled when resting, would flick nervously when she was anxious. He had learned to respect her privacy, never asking too many questions. After all, she had agreed to live in a human apartment, and he didn't want to overwhelm her with curiosity. One evening, as Liam read a book on the couch, he noticed Zur pacing slowly in the living room. Her movements were careful but deliberate, and her eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the dim light of the room. Liam frowned, but didn't speak immediately. He had learned that Zyra preferred to be observed quietly when she was deep in thought. He watched as she paused near the window, gazing outside at the empty streets, a shadow of longing in her expression. "Everything okay?" Liam asked softly. Zur didn't answer immediately. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting something he couldn't quite name. Maybe confusion, maybe unease. She tilted her head slightly, and then moved away, letting out a soft, almost musical sigh. Liam's heart sank a little. He wanted to help, but he didn't know how. He realized that while he could understand her mind in some ways, her body, her instincts, were another story entirely. That night, Liam lay in bed listening to the faint hum of Zer's breathing from the living room. He felt a strange mix of excitement and worry. Living with an alien wasn't just about learning new customs or sharing space. It was about discovering emotions and instincts that humans couldn't fully comprehend. Liam knew deep down that this lockdown would test him in ways he hadn't imagined. And he was right. Because in the calm of these early days, before any chaos began, Liam had no idea that Zyra's body had cycles far more intense than anything human. He didn't yet know that her presence, already extraordinary, was about to become unpredictable, overwhelming, and life-changing. For now, though, they sat together in a fragile peace, two beings from completely different worlds learning to coexist. Liam thought he understood Zer, but the truth was that the universe had its own plans, and the real journey was only just beginning. The next morning, Liam noticed subtle changes in Zer. She moved differently, her steps hesitant yet tense, as if invisible currents tugged at her. Her eyes glowed a little brighter than usual, and her tail twitched whenever she sensed him near. Liam tried to ignore it at first, thinking it was nothing more than her adjusting to lockdown life. But deep down, a small worry began to grow in his chest. "Sira, are you feeling okay?" he asked gently, as she hovered near the kitchen counter, fidgeting with a bowl. She turned to him, and for the first time, he saw a strange mix of emotions on her face. Confusion, discomfort, and something he couldn't name. Instead of answering, she gave a soft, almost musical sigh and continued moving about, avoiding his gaze. Liam's stomach tightened. He spent the day watching her carefully, noting her restless pacing, the occasional low hum that escaped her lips, and the way she seemed drawn to corners of the apartment as if seeking refuge. Her usual calm, measured energy was replaced with something unpredictable. It wasn't anger or sadness. It was a raw, primal tension that made Liam uneasy. By the evening, the changes became more pronounced. Zyra's movements were quicker, almost nervous, and she avoided sitting too long. Objects she passed were sometimes nudged accidentally, and once a cup slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Liam jumped up to pick up the pieces, heart racing. "Zyra, you need to slow down. You might hurt yourself," he said softly, but she only shook her head and continued pacing. Liam realized that whatever was happening wasn't something she could control easily. Humans experience stress and anxiety, sure, but this felt different. Her body, her instincts were commanding her in ways he couldn't understand. He thought about reaching out to otherworldly medical sources online, but the information was scarce and technical. Nothing could prepare him for witnessing someone he cared about lose control over themselves, no matter how intelligent they were. As night fell, Liam tried to talk to her again. "Zer, please tell me what's wrong. I want to help." She stopped pacing this time, turning to face him fully. Her eyes shimmered, not with anger, but with a deep, vulnerable fear. She opened her mouth, but instead of words, a soft, wavering hum escaped her. It was musical, beautiful in an alien way, but it was also a cry of distress. Liam swallowed hard. He had no idea how to respond. He decided then to stay close, but give her space. He set up a blanket on the couch in the living room, keeping a safe distance yet within reach if she needed comfort. Hours passed. Zyra moved around, sometimes coming near, then retreating again. Liam felt helpless. He had always thought of himself as adaptable, compassionate, capable of solving problems. But this was unlike anything he had ever faced. He realized that caring for her meant patience, understanding, and a willingness to witness vulnerability without immediate solutions. As the night deepened, Liam noticed Zer curling into a small space near the window. Her breathing uneven, her tail wrapping around her legs nervously. She seemed small, almost fragile, despite the strength and grace she usually carried. Liam felt a surge of protectiveness he had never experienced before. "It's okay, Zer. I'm here," he whispered, his voice trembling slightly. She tilted her head in acknowledgement, her glowing eyes softening just enough to let him know she trusted him. Even when everything inside her was chaotic, Liam sat quietly, letting her move freely, refusing to reach out unless she wanted him to. He watched her hum softly to herself, a sound that was part comfort, part confusion. He realized then that living with an alien wasn't about control or understanding everything. It was about presence. Being there, even in the moments of fear or chaos, could make a difference. By the time the clock struck midnight, Liam felt a mixture of exhaustion and awe. Zyra's behavior was erratic, unpredictable, and utterly alien. But it was also deeply human in its vulnerability. He had glimpsed the raw intensity of her biology, and for the first time, he understood that he wasn't just living with a roommate from another world. He was sharing space with a being whose instincts could be as powerful as her intellect. Liam lay on the couch, eyes fixed on her, heart heavy with worry, but determined. Whatever was coming next, he knew he wouldn't leave her alone. He didn't fully understand what Zer was experiencing, but he could be there for her, and sometimes that was enough. By the third day, Liam realized the situation had escalated far beyond his expectations. Zer's restlessness had turned into something more intense, more urgent. Her movements were faster, more erratic, and she seemed unable to remain still for even a moment. The apartment that had once felt peaceful and warm now felt alive with tension, as if it were holding its breath along with her. Liam watched helplessly as she paced from one corner of the room to another, her tail flicking wildly, knocking over a stack of books in the process. He jumped to catch them before they hit the floor, heart pounding, but she didn't even notice. Her eyes glowed with a strange light, and her breathing had a rhythm that was both hypnotic and unsettling. It was unlike anything he had ever seen in a living being, intelligent, yet completely driven by instinct. "Zira, calm down," Liam said softly, trying to approach her. She turned sharply, almost startled, and hissed, a sound that sent a chill down his spine. It wasn't aggression in the usual sense. It was a warning, a clear signal that she was not in control of her body. Liam froze, taking a careful step back. He realized then that he had entered uncharted territory. He was sharing space with a being who was capable of extreme vulnerability and unpredictable energy all at once. He tried to reason with her as he would with a human roommate. "It's okay. You're safe here. I won't let anything happen to you." Zer paused briefly, ears twitching, her head tilting as if trying to understand him. Then, as quickly as she had stopped, she bolted toward the kitchen, knocking over a chair in the process. Liam sighed, rubbing his temples. This wasn't a situation that could be fixed with logic. It was biological, primal. Liam spent the day cleaning up after small disasters, broken dishes, tipped over chairs, scattered papers. Every time he tried to engage her calmly, she would whirl around, sensing his presence, but not stopping. He realized that giving her space was only part of the solution. He needed to be patient, silent, and alert all at once. By evening, her heat cycle had intensified further. Sarah's breathing became heavier, and her hums turned into long melodic wails that echoed through the apartment. The sound was beautiful, in a strange alien way, but it carried an undeniable weight of urgency and discomfort. Liam felt a pang of helplessness. He had never seen anyone or anything so overtaken by instinct. It made him realize the fragility of life, no matter how advanced a species might be. For the first time, Liam truly understood the responsibility of caring for someone so different. It wasn't about rules or schedules. It was about empathy, observation, and unwavering patience. He tried different approaches, soft music, dimmed lights, gentle words, but nothing seemed to fully calm her. Zyra's body demanded release. Her instincts screamed for attention he couldn't provide in the way her species required. As night fell, Liam stayed close, watching her curl in the corner near the window. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't leave her alone. Every now and then, she would make a sudden movement, knocking over a plant or leaping to the other side of the room. He would rush to catch her or steady the items, his heart racing. It was exhausting, but he refused to show frustration or fear. Zyra needed him to remain calm, to be the anchor in her storm of instinct. Finally, after hours of chaos, Zyra paused. She leaned against the wall, breathing heavily, her glowing eyes fixed on Liam. There was a fleeting moment of recognition in them, as if she understood his dedication, his effort to stay by her side without judgment. Liam felt an overwhelming surge of emotion, pride, relief, and a strange tenderness toward this alien being whose life had become intertwined with his own in ways he could not fully comprehend. He approached her cautiously, extending a hand. She did not recoil. She did not strike. Instead, she let him sit beside her, allowing a small connection amidst the whirlwind of her heat. Liam didn't speak. Words were useless now. All he could do was be present, steady, and patient. In that chaotic apartment, Liam realized something profound. The universe was vast, unpredictable, and full of challenges beyond human imagination. Yet here, in this tiny space, he was discovering what it truly meant to care for another being, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary, and because connection sometimes came through chaos rather than comfort. That night, the apartment fell into a tense quiet. Zyra curled on the floor, trembling slightly, and Liam stayed close, alert to every movement, every breath. He knew that this was only the beginning. The heat cycle would not end quickly, and he would need to be ready for every unpredictable wave of energy that came with it. But as he watched her, exhausted but alive, he also knew something else, that he had begun to see Zur not just as a roommate, but as a living being with instincts, vulnerabilities, and emotions just as intense as his own. And in that realization, Liam felt the first real stirrings of understanding, and a bond that no ordinary lockdown could have ever created. By the fourth day of Zur's heat cycle, Liam realized that he could no longer just observe. The apartment had become a storm of movement, energy, and tension, and Zur was at the center of it. She no longer paced calmly. She moved with bursts of frantic energy, her tail thrashing, eyes glowing brightly in the dim light. Every corner seemed to hold some obstacle she might collide with, and every object he tried to keep in place tipped over at the slightest touch. Liam felt exhausted mentally and physically, but he knew he couldn't give up. He tried everything he could think of: soft music, dimmed lights, gentle words. Sometimes they worked for a few minutes, enough to give him hope, but it never lasted. Zyra's instincts were stronger than any human intervention, and each wave of restlessness left her more frustrated. Liam watched her hum and wail, feeling helpless. He realized that this wasn't about discipline, rules, or logic. This was about survival, patience, and understanding a being whose biology and instincts were entirely alien to him. Liam searched online for guidance, scanning obscure forums and xenobiology papers. Most of the advice was fragmented, technical, or based on species he had never met. One source suggested that alien cycles could sometimes be eased through tactile comfort, while another recommended leaving the being alone until the wave passed. The conflicting advice left him more anxious. He wanted to act, to do something, anything, but every attempt seemed inadequate. That evening, Zur collapsed on the floor near the window. Her breathing was heavy, her body trembling. Liam froze for a moment, panic rising in his chest. He knelt beside her, gently taking her hands in his. "Zira, I'm here. You're not alone," he whispered, unsure if she understood the words or the meaning behind them. For a long moment, she said nothing, only leaning slightly toward him, seeking the comfort of a familiar presence. Liam realized something vital in that moment. It wasn't about control. He couldn't stop her instincts or force her to calm down. All he could do was provide support, show empathy, and be present. Slowly, he adjusted the environment. He moved fragile objects out of reach, dimmed the lights, and played soft music that seemed to resonate with her. Every small adjustment mattered, and every gesture of care seemed to help, even if only a little. Throughout the night, Liam stayed vigilant. He barely slept, his eyes flicking between her and the apartment around them. Zyra would sometimes pace, sometimes hum, sometimes curl in corners. Each movement was unpredictable, each sound a reminder of the intensity of her cycle. And yet, through all the chaos, Liam noticed tiny moments of trust, a glance, a soft hum in response to his words, a tail that twitched less violently when he approached. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it told him he was making a difference. By dawn, Liam was physically drained, but he felt a sense of determination stronger than exhaustion. He realized that living with Zur wasn't about comfort. It was about facing vulnerability together. Every wave of chaos, every moment of intensity, was an opportunity to strengthen their bond. He could not control her, but he could care for her, and that mattered more than anything. That morning, Zur paused again, her glowing eyes meeting his. She seemed calmer, though still tense, and for a brief moment, she allowed him to sit beside her. Liam didn't rush or speak too much. He simply stayed present, hand close, but not forcing contact. She leaned slightly into his proximity, a quiet gesture of trust that made his chest ache with relief. For the first time, he truly understood the depth of empathy required to live with someone so different. Zyra's instincts were overwhelming, alien, and entirely outside human experience. But beneath that, there was vulnerability, intelligence, and a subtle desire for connection. Liam realized that sometimes care was not about fixing or solving. It was about being there without judgment, without fear. By the evening, the apartment felt less chaotic. Not because Zara's cycle had ended, but because Liam had found a rhythm with her. He moved around quietly, anticipating her needs, offering space when she wanted it, and proximity when she sought comfort. It was exhausting, but also deeply rewarding. He felt a strange sense of pride, not in controlling the chaos, but in surviving it together, in forming a bond that transcended species and instincts. As Liam watched Zyra curl up in a small corner, humming softly, he knew this experience would change him forever. It was more than a test of patience. It was a lesson in empathy, understanding, and the power of presence. In the midst of chaos, he had found clarity. Sometimes the greatest acts of care were silent, patient, and unwavering. And for the first time since the heat cycle began, he felt a flicker of hope. They could survive this together. The chaos of Zer's heat cycle was slowly settling into something Liam could manage, though it was far from over. By the 5th day, he realized that survival wasn't just about keeping the apartment intact. It was about truly understanding her. He needed to learn her patterns, anticipate her movements, and find ways to ease her discomfort. It was exhausting work, but he felt a strange purpose in it, a feeling he hadn't experienced before. Liam spent hours observing her. He noticed that certain times of day made her more restless, that soft music seemed to calm her, and that dim lights created a sense of safety. Even the simple act of giving her space when she twitched her tail or hummed softly made a difference. Each observation felt like discovering a secret language, one that required patience, empathy, and humility. He realized that he couldn't treat her like a human roommate. She was completely different, and respecting that difference was essential. He also noticed small signals of trust. Sometimes she would glance at him before moving, as if checking whether he was watching without fear. Sometimes, when she curled in a quiet corner, she would allow him to sit nearby, close but careful not to touch her unless she initiated it. These moments, though subtle, filled Liam with a warm sense of connection. He realized that even in her most chaotic moments, Zyra valued him as a calm presence, a steady point in the storm of her instincts. Liam began creating a simple routine to help her through the cycle. Mornings were quiet with soft light streaming through the window. He would leave her food near her favorite spots and play gentle music. During the day, he gave her space to move and hum, always keeping an eye on potential hazards. In the evenings, he would sit with her, quietly talking, humming softly, or reading aloud. It was a delicate balance between presence and distance, and he learned quickly that pushing too much or too little could make her agitation flare. Despite the intensity of the cycle, Liam found himself growing emotionally closer to Zyra. He began to appreciate the small details he had overlooked before. The soft hums that expressed her mood, the twitch of her tail that signaled curiosity, the way she occasionally looked at him with a fleeting softness in her glowing eyes. These signals reminded him that beneath the alien biology, she had emotions, fears, and needs not unlike a human's. It made him feel protective, responsible, and deeply connected. One evening, Zyra collapsed near the window again, exhausted from the waves of her cycle. Liam rushed to her side, gently supporting her. "You're doing okay, Zyra. I'm here," he whispered. She looked up at him, her eyes shimmering, and for a moment, she hummed a low, soft tone that seemed almost like gratitude. Liam's heart swelled. He realized that understanding her wasn't just about observing, it was about forming a bond through patience and empathy, a connection built on trust rather than control. He began to see the cycle not as something to endure, but as something that could strengthen their bond. Each wave of chaos, each burst of restless energy, was an opportunity to learn more about her, to practice patience, and to be present in a way that transcended words. It was a strange, beautiful form of communication, one that taught Liam the value of listening, observing, and respecting a being entirely different from himself. By the end of the day, Zyra seemed calmer, though still exhausted. Liam sat quietly, watching her hum softly as she curled near the corner. He felt a deep sense of accomplishment, not for controlling the chaos, but for understanding it, for being present in a way that mattered. The apartment felt peaceful for the first time in days, and Liam realized that empathy and patience had become as important as any action he could take. That night, he reflected on what he had learned. Caring for Zyra wasn't about solving a problem, it was about connecting, understanding, and being patient. It was about recognizing the intensity of her instincts and meeting her where she was, even when it was overwhelming. Liam felt a quiet pride in himself. But more importantly, he felt a deep love for this alien being whose trust he had earned in the middle of chaos. As he drifted off to sleep, he watched Zur curl gently in her resting spot, her breathing soft and rhythmic. The storm of the past days had not disappeared, but he had learned how to navigate it. And in that understanding, Liam felt hope, connection, and a sense of purpose stronger than anything he had known before. By the sixth day, Liam had grown into a rhythm with Zur. Her heat cycle still surged in unpredictable waves, but he had learned to read the subtle signs that indicated when she needed space, when she needed comfort, and when she simply needed him to be present. The apartment, once chaotic and tense, had begun to feel like a fragile sanctuary, a place where both of them could survive, and in their own way, connect. Zyra still moved with restless energy, her tail twitching, and her glowing eyes scanning the room constantly. But Liam noticed small moments of calm, fleeting yet meaningful. She would pause near him, sometimes humming softly in a tone that seemed almost like communication, and he would sit quietly, letting her know through his presence that she was safe. Each of these moments deepened the trust between them, and Liam felt a strange warmth in his chest, a mixture of relief, admiration, and care for this being so different from him, yet so profoundly connected to his life. He began to understand more about Zer than he had ever imagined possible. She wasn't just an alien roommate. She was a living being with needs, fears, and emotions that mirrored human vulnerability. Her instincts were powerful, yes, but so was her capacity for connection. Liam realized that in the midst of her most chaotic moments, she still reached for the familiar, for safety, and for understanding, and he could provide that. One evening, as the room was bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun, Zyra collapsed near the couch, exhausted from a particularly intense wave of her cycle. Liam knelt beside her, gently brushing a strand of shimmering hair from her face. "You're safe, Zyra. I'm right here," he whispered, his voice steady, despite his own exhaustion. She looked up at him, her glowing eyes meeting his, and for the first time in days, she allowed herself to lean slightly against him. The gesture was small, almost imperceptible, but to Liam, it spoke volumes. He felt a surge of emotion he hadn't expected. Protectiveness, tenderness, and a deep growing bond. It wasn't love in the human romantic sense. Not yet, it was something more fundamental. Trust, empathy, and the recognition that they were not alone in this chaotic world. Liam realized that surviving this lockdown together meant more than enduring Zera's heat. It meant learning how to be present for someone in ways that went beyond words, beyond comprehension, beyond expectation. Days passed in this delicate dance. Liam learned to anticipate Zer's needs, to respond to the subtle shifts in her posture, or the quiet hums she made when she sought comfort. He gave her space when she needed it, gently guiding her toward rest when the waves of her cycle threatened to overwhelm her. And slowly, imperceptibly, a pattern emerged. Moments of calm became longer, and the apartment's tension began to ease. Zyra began to show signs of understanding and gratitude. Sometimes she would glance at him with softness in her glowing eyes, a small acknowledgement of the care he had shown. Other times she would hum in response to his gentle voice, a melodic connection that spoke more than words ever could. Liam cherished these moments, holding them close as evidence that even the most alien, most intense experiences could lead to understanding and trust. One quiet night, after a particularly exhausting day, Liam and Zer sat together on the couch. He read aloud from a book he had been keeping for her, his voice soft and calm. Zyra leaned against him slightly, her breathing steady for the first time in days. Liam didn't rush, didn't speak more than necessary. He simply allowed the connection to exist. It was a fragile, beautiful moment, a testament to the bond that had formed amidst chaos and instinct. In that moment, Liam understood something profound. Empathy, patience, and presence could bridge worlds. Zyra's biology, her instincts, and her alien nature had challenged him beyond anything he had imagined. But it had also opened a door to a connection that transcended species. He realized that trust once earned could create bonds stronger than fear, chaos, or distance. As the night deepened and the apartment settled into a quiet rhythm, Liam watched Zyra curl up near him, glowing softly in the dim light. He felt a deep sense of accomplishment and gratitude. The chaos of the past days had forged something rare and beautiful, a bond built on understanding, patience, and unwavering care. And in that bond, Liam found hope. Hope that they could survive the rest of the lockdown. Hope that they could face whatever challenges the universe sent their way. And hope that in the midst of chaos, trust and connection could be found, even between two beings from completely different worlds. By the seventh day, the worst of Zyra's heat cycle had passed. The apartment, which had felt like a storm of chaos and restlessness for so long, finally settled into quiet. Objects were no longer overturned. The air was calm, and the soft hum of Zyra's breathing was steady. Liam finally allowed himself to exhale, though his chest still held the tension of the past week. He watched Zyra carefully. She moved more slowly now, her glowing eyes softer, her tail resting calmly behind her, the frantic energy that had dominated her. Every movement was gone, replaced by a delicate exhaustion. Liam felt a deep wave of relief and emotion he couldn't fully name. For days he had witnessed a being struggle with instincts so powerful that they seemed beyond comprehension, and through it all they had endured together. Zyra approached him slowly, her steps measured, and for the first time she spoke a few words in her own language. Liam didn't understand the meaning, but her tone was soft, warm, and filled with recognition. He realized she was expressing trust, gratitude, and something deeper. A bond formed not through force or control, but through presence, patience, and unwavering care. Liam smiled gently. "I understand, Zyra," he said softly, though he didn't fully understand her words. He didn't need to. The connection between them had transcended language. It had been forged in chaos, nurtured through patience, and strengthened by empathy. In that moment, he understood that caring for someone meant more than responding to their needs. It meant walking beside them through vulnerability and uncertainty, without fear or judgment. They spent the day in quiet companionship. Liam prepared food, leaving some near her favorite spots while he settled with a book nearby. Zyra moved with calm curiosity, observing him, and occasionally humming softly. The apartment, once tense and unpredictable, now felt warm and safe. A home they had survived together. Liam realized that survival was not just about weathering a storm, it was about learning to coexist, understand, and trust. As night fell, Liam and Zyra sat near the window, watching the city outside slowly awaken from the emptiness imposed by lockdown. The silence was no longer oppressive. It was gentle, reflective. Liam reached out, and Zyra allowed him to take her hand. A small gesture, but heavy with meaning. He felt the weight of the past week, exhaustion, fear, chaos, and now relief, connection, and hope. He thought back to the first day of the cycle, when she had paced frantically, eyes glowing, tail thrashing. He remembered the panic, the helplessness, and the worry that had kept him awake for nights. And now, seeing her calm, trusting, and vulnerable in his presence, he realized how far they had come. They had survived not because the chaos had ended, but because they had faced it together. Zyra leaned closer, her hum soft and melodic, and Liam felt a warmth he had never experienced. It was not merely physical. It was emotional, deep, and unspoken. In that sound, he heard gratitude, recognition, and a quiet form of companionship that transcended the limits of species. For the first time, he realized that humans weren't the only beings capable of growth, resilience, and connection. Zyra had taught him as much as he had cared for her. Liam reached out again, gently brushing her hair from her face. "You're safe now, Zyra," he whispered. She rested her head lightly against his shoulder, and he felt the full weight of their shared journey. The chaos, the fear, the exhaustion, and the fragile, beautiful bond that had emerged from it. He knew that lockdown would continue, that the world outside remained uncertain and sometimes harsh, but inside their small apartment, a sanctuary had been built. It was a place where patience, empathy, and understanding had triumphed over chaos. A place where a human and an alien had learned to trust, to care, and to survive together. As Liam watched Zyra drift into a soft, peaceful sleep, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The chaos had tested him, challenged him, and changed him. But in surviving it, he had discovered the true power of empathy and the quiet strength of connection. Sometimes he realized the greatest lessons in life came, not from victories or triumphs, but from standing beside someone in their most vulnerable moments and finding the courage to stay. And for Liam, Zyra, and the fragile peace they had created, that courage had been enough.